Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm Michael Radowski. I'm with Visit Dallas. We have a great conversation we're going to talk about here on sales analytics and what it means for the future. First, let me start by introducing the incredible people on the panel with me. I'll start go from side to side. So first is Eric Evian with Tourism Economics. I've known Eric about almost 10 years now, as he was my counterpart in Philadelphia for a long time before going to Tourism Economics. Next to Eric is Cindy Decker with Visit Houston. We've also known each other for quite some time, and we love to bounce stuff back and forth together. So this will be a very natural conversation for us, as we've talked many of these topics before. And then on the end, we have Susan Brenzio with Sightline, who was formerly with San Diego Tourism Authority, and also very similar situation. So. All right, so thank you. So to kind of start, maybe, Cindy, if we can start with you. I want to kind of go looking at analytics programs and building for sales, what do you see are what are the benefits of really building a solid sales analytics program, and how has it helped you and Visit Houston evolve over the past 3 years?
For us, it was a matter of how much information, how much data we had. I came from the hotel industry. I spent 25 years in revenue management with Marriott Hotels, and moved over to the DMO world about 5 years ago. And so once I got here, I realized you have so many different systems to go to find the information, that when I worked in the hotel industry, I just went to the Marriott system and I pulled all the data that I wanted in one spot. And so it was crucial for me to start a group strategy with the DMO to have all of the data just going into one location and understanding all of the different data sources that you can use. It could be star information, it could be, mobile information, all the different sources can help you in building a sales strategy. And I think that was what, it was the first order of business for us.
Yeah. Awesome. So Eric, how would you kind of, in similar question, what would you see that you're working with destinations and, that are looking at their programs? What would you recommend, and where do you see the benefits?
Well, I kind of I think in a unique position where I used to be on the DMO side and be in your shoes, and now kind of went over to tourism economics, where we built a tool to help analyze this data a little bit more efficiently and productively. The sales analytics at the end of it, it's about figuring out what your goals should be, how to get there, and how you can yield business better. We'll get into this a little bit later, but we just come so far as an industry, especially on the sales side, just over the last, I would say, last 10 years, absolutely, but even the last 5 years, things have kind of accelerated. Stakeholders have gotten a lot smarter. Some of that was brought on to the industry prior to the pandemic being in an extremely good place. And it was more about, not so much about driving occupancy anymore, but it was about yielding the right business and getting the right customer in-house. So these tools or this conversation, I think is just going to be more and more critical as we move forward, in terms of not just yielding the convention centers and the group business in general in the market better, but also help be a good steward for the destination in terms of what brings the most benefit to your partners and stakeholders.
Awesome. And Susan, can you?
Yeah, definitely COVID being a major crisis and having to deal with that, no matter what the industry segment on the group side, also very critical. The sales analytics, for at the time being with San Diego and having built this all out for many years, it was that speed to understanding, speed to the market, speed to the customer. So could we discuss what was going on quickly with our stakeholders? Could we understand what the shifts were that were needing to be made? So all of that was having that data, right, easily accessible in the right way, the right metrics and things that you were following at your fingertips was crucial to, again, having those conversations, but leading your destination out of it and having that leadership with that conversation. So whether it's shifting your sales team or understanding what markets are performing or not performing, or how the DMO is going to adjust moving forward, that's where these analytics, these platforms all benefit in the DMO being able to be more effective. So I think that, I mean, COVID just, I mean, in so many ways, right, across the DMO elevated that, but for the sales team especially as well, what was really in that black box. Sales teams are very, can be on their own, they're making their goals. Really, are they adhering processes and also being consistent, and how are you able to kind of bring that data forward to the leadership to be able to make change? So those programs have been critical in that way.
Yeah, I know going back a little bit of history into TPRA, so Susan presented on data analytics and just really, what can be done and done with it, like back in, I think it was in Kansas City in 2013. So that was shortly after I had transitioned from Kissimmee, Florida to visit Dallas, where we obviously, Kissimmee was very leisure focused and Dallas had a much larger, very robust, meetings industry and things like that too. So I know that was one of the things where I really started taking a deeper dive into some of the analytics, and our sales leader, we had a new sales leader come in right around that similar time. And we really were able to dive into it and really start pulling a lot of, messages together, which really, I mean, our performance soared, but second from that too, also, it really started to really drive a lot of conversations and build up a lot of relationships in the industry where, before that, there wasn't a great relationship between Visit Dallas and the hoteliers. And really with all of those conversations and what we were able to do, we really started, driving that message, which kind of comes like what I'd kind of like to take the conversation next. And I guess we'll just go straight down. But Eric, if you can kind of talk about, you can maybe talk a little about Philly and also with what you're doing now, how the analytics can support stakeholder engagement and trust, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's with the board, the hotel partners, or local industry.
Yeah, I'll go back, I think 8 years in time, and it was prior to me joining the Philly CBB at the time. And they hadn't had a research department prior to that, and I joined them and had a very good conversation with the CEO. And there were a lot of friction between the hotel partners and the DMOs. They have two in that market at the time. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to improve our stakeholder engagement and be transparent to help build credibility over time. It was not done overnight, but educating our stakeholder was a key part of that, but also showing the good and the bad as well, and not trying to paint a good picture when we understood that that was not necessarily the case for everyone. We started having much more productive conversations about what's good for the market when you need business. And they're not always right? They also, can be very selfish at times in terms of what's good for them. And you got to reiterate many times that you're here to serve the market and the destination as a whole, and not just a few hotels that might benefit from certain pieces of business. So having that conversation with them and the impact on the group business, not just from a total attendee and room nights and economic impact kind of perspective, but digging deeper, getting more detail. We got a lot of detailed data from STR that we worked with. We got a compression analysis from STR every 2 years that we used and we shared with our partners, really helped in those conversations. And it's about, the hotel performance. It's about the compression. It's about the in-market behavior, the convention attendees. What else do they do when they're in market? What neighborhoods do they go into? Who's staying outside the block? Are those ratios changing? All those conversations become part of the bigger picture when you're trying to then attract new business to you, already having those conversations up front. And we also, at some point right before I left, we implemented or were successful in getting a TID, which essentially works as a bid fund for the market. And we had to get even smarter in terms of showing, here's what we believe it's a good piece of business for us or for the market, and essentially had a scorecard for every single piece of business that we may try to incentivize to get to the market. Again, your stakeholders are getting smarter as well. So we had to adapt to that and make sure that we were transparent and sharing good information with them. We always had a lot of information, a lot of data. Again, it wasn't done overnight. Some of it's tied to the CRM system and what's available to you in the CRM system. We had to make a lot of fields mandatory to make sure the sales folks filled it out. So we had good information to go by. And that took a few years to kind of get to the point where we felt we were in a good place with it, but made tremendous strides during that time. I'm not saying we wouldn't have gotten the TID done without data and analytics, but it sure made it a lot smoother process than if we hadn't.
Oh, go ahead.
You go.
I'm with Eric on this. When I joined the DMO, again, I came from a market leader position in Marriott Hotels for Houston. And so I already knew what, as a hotelier, I was missing from the DMO. And so when I walked into the position, the first thing was educate our sales team and educate internally why the hoteliers don't give you the block, why the hoteliers don't want this piece of business. It took me a couple of months to sit and realize that when they were evaluating groups, all they were doing was, oh, there's space in the convention center that week. Great, let's go. And so educating them on the impact of what that week would do to the market versus the following week, or shifting it by a day. I was immediately told, well, citywides don't shift. I'm like, yeah, they do. Every group will shift if you ask them. And so really digging deep in that. And then Terry's point is gaining some of that trust back from the partners, right? The fact that I was one of them was a benefit for me, but I still had to gain their confidence in the information and the transparency that we were giving them, and correlating things like the citywide room nights with star market data, with future data, for travel click, so that they knew that I was looking at the need dates and the holes and how to fill and the demographic of the convention. We probably wouldn't book a youth group in October and mid-March, but we would certainly entertain it in June, July, and August. And so understanding the demographic and the spend and the volatility of the Houston market. And then more importantly, we started digging with STAR information further into the submarkets, right? As a DMO in Houston, we're pretty spread out. And so it was understanding that compression that a convention did and how it compressed out to different markets, and me understanding it and educating our team on what that does, but then also educating the market on, if you can give us a block to get a 6,000 room peak convention, the hoteliers were like, well, I don't need to participate. I don't need to be in the block. I'll just feel a compression. So walking them through what that looks like and analytically showing them, look, this is what the market, your submarkets are going to look like if we take this convention and you give us 40% of your rooms on block, and understanding that. And so it helped to drive not just our business and convention center and how we maximize the space, but also how we compress the market on certain dates. And we started talking their language. When we looked at pace, we used TAP at the time, and TAP was looking at an algorithm of a 3-year average of, I don't know what. And so we rebuilt the TAP report to show pace, actual hotel pace at this time last year, and look at it by segment, and how's the pace in corporate business and how's it in association. And then also broke down transient trends for the hotel so that I understand, look, I'm looking at corporate piece of business in March, and this is your highest leisure demand timeframe. So how do we make both of them work together in the market so that you're still getting that leisure drive through the weekend, but we're able to book a convention here and really mix that. And the success for us with using all of those tools, I started a revenue management roundtable with all of the revenue leaders in the market once a quarter. I would meet with them and just walk through all the data and talk about what we've been doing and what's coming. I started DOS meetings once a month with our executive VP of sales, and I would go out to the market and meet with the directors of sales and walk them through, here's some of the groups we're looking at, and here's the strategy, and here's what do you need? How are you doing? What are your need dates? Where's your holes? And then internally to our stakeholders, internally was helping like the conventions events team and our services team on servicing the conventions and how we staffed them. And we were, cutting out a day of move-in so that you could flip the room faster or not, but, so working with them to understand, okay, operationally, what does that do for you so that we can help the whole market? And it took time. Like Eric said, it took a while to do it. Probably, I would say 2 years, really solidly. We were on a good pace, and then COVID hit. And so then it was even more important to really let the market know, look, we're looking at all this stuff still. We know the trends, we see the patterns. here's what we know, here's what we have, to help them gain confidence in that we're going to make it out of this pandemic. We're not just like sitting back and waiting for this to end. And that went a long way, and our partners partnering with us and meeting with us and just getting information overall.
Yeah, and I'll just add to the stakeholder engagement and trust area. You know, I think, as we all know, selling the destination is a partnership. You can't do it as a DMO without all of your hotel partners, your sales teams at the hotels, your site experience people. So as San Diego started developing all of their, you know, really what was the value of the DMO, and going down that discussion to say, what is the sales team going to bring to the destination? We probably the most extreme case or situation of accountability, but the hotel sales team moved to we're only going to incentivize, and our sales team's only going to be responsible for bringing new business into the destination. It's the hotel's job to keep it when it's there and bring it back the next year. They're only going to be gold. And so the goal got cut in half, and there was support around that, but that was the value. With that, there was analytics and accountability built all around that from a 360-degree perspective. So as a deal with the hotels, we saw exactly how their hotel team, the salespeople, responded to those leads, for example, and booking that group business. Site experience was a team. When we knew the client was coming out, we knew what they needed, what hotels they were going to, and that what was expected of the hotel when they arrived at the door. And the meeting planner filled out a survey of that, even right after they left in the car, they're on their iPad doing that feedback, gets back to the sales team, that gets sent to the GM the next week. That was all due to those analytics and that mutual agreement of what was important in selling group business into the destination, and how the DMO and the hotels were going to work as partners. So when a hotel GM would come and say, what have you done for me lately? It was very easy for our sales leadership, you know, to see the leads definites, but also here's what's active. Here's what we can book together right now. Here's how your team is responding. Is your sales team responding and pursuing the leads we're giving you? And if not, let's look at that. It's to have that open conversation of mutual partnership and accountability and trust. And the data was all key in driving that discussion and moving it forward. Once you have that established, then it was, okay, let's talk about, right, the best business and what we're talking about now. It's like, what are your need periods? Let's help fill that. But we got getting rid of all of that, the mistrust and the what have I done for you lately, and the constant, they're in an ivory tower, they don't know what's going on. The DMO, well, Margie Sitton at the time, our sales VP, used to say the GMs would run when they'd see her come in, because she always had more data, more insight, and was open to that conversation. And that's part of building that trust, is being open with that and not being afraid to look, as Eric was saying, like, you know, yeah, you're not getting the leads you should, or we're not sending the right leads to your property. How can we do that better? What do we have in our database that's more fit? How do I redirect my sales team to, you know, understand what this area needs or this hotel needs? What's the share? Who are they losing to? We always talk about what destinations are you losing to? We talk to them about what hotels within the market are you losing to help them build how they're selling as well. Like, how do we give them insight? We have that data as a DMO, and you can use that to help them, again, evolve. But it's bringing all the boats, right? And selling as a group and a destination. And I think without having the data and the analytics to drive it, and not being just constant opinion and conjecture and perception, right? Sales teams are working very hard, but is it the right business? And then again, for that stakeholder, but that smoothed a ton of the stakeholder issues and trust that had happened. So
I think that's a
lot of
great
it.
point. I mean, we won't succeed if we don't have hand-in-hand cooperation and working with our hotel partners, especially in the group space, because obviously, you know, we're actively selling their space, right? They're part of our product. So we really need to be on the same page. And something that Cindy mentioned before was talking about the TAP report, and just what that essentially is. I'm not sure, many people may not have ever heard of that, but that report is essentially just a pace report. It's looking at how how the destination is basing on all bookings they've done into the future years as well as future months. And we also talked about evolution. If you would roll back about 10 years, most destinations across the country, that was the entire sales analytics planning and tool. And so they would take it to their hotels and show it to them, and it was basically just that was the conversation. Like, here you go, this is where it's at. And it's a great conversation starter. I mean, we may use it as a conversation starter, a big point, but there's so many other depths and levels you need to get into in working with the hotels and what it really means and how you're doing it, like how you're making the plans happen. And that wouldn't be possible without really, getting in a deeper understanding and working with the partners and talking about stakeholder engagement with the hotel partners. I mean, we work with an improvement district, and, they approve every single dollar we spend for the most part on all of our activities, right? So we had to have that extra level of understanding with them, and really we utilize this and really, becoming experts at the destination, which I know, tourism marketing destinations throughout the world need to make, they need to be viewed like that in their destinations. But being able to do that, we get involved with the strategic planning of the hotels. We're walking, hands held together closely as we're building our strategies with their strategies along the way. And we've been able to say, we've had tremendous growth, over the past 10 years. Like speaking of the TAP report, like we used to, when we first started really looking at this and looking at different ways of doing things and building different things, we went from about 2 million room nights booked for future and doubled it. So, leading into COVID, it's not quite as great today, but we'll get it back. But we had 4 million future room nights booked. And that's, again, working with that, better filling out the calendar, yield managing our assets and our inventories to really get that to work. So what's this kind of going to come? And I'd like to roll with the next question is, how can sales leaders and how can we help sales leaders use analytics to change our deployment, our sales behaviors, and other strategies we do to improve our overall destination performance?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I think, we, like Susan said earlier, we've always had the data. We may have needed to make some tweaks in terms of the inputs, making sure we got good inputs, but the data we've always had it. The DMO or CVB, no one has as much information on the market, whether that's a destination or a state, than you all do, right? A hotel or an attraction or any of your other partners, they may have information on their own property and their own business. Sometimes that's not even that sophisticated and great. And they may have some information on their comp sets, but that's usually stops there, right? So it's an incredible opportunity, like Cindy said earlier too, to really establish yourself as the go-to source for destination intelligence, and that's across the entire board, whether that's leisure or group, but specifically on the group because it's proprietary data that only you have access to. We've always had that data. It hasn't always been available at your fingertips, and I think that's where some of the tools that over the last few years have come into place have been helpful to make that more readily accessible. During COVID, one of the things that a lot of the destinations that we work with wanted to look at is how do we redeploy? Where are we getting leads from? What market segments are we getting leads from? We saw sports skyrocketing. They moved more people from one segment that was typically focused on corporate over to sports, right? And it was like the one person who typically handled sports all of a sudden had every single lead in the organization, right? And it may seem super simple, but it's not always the case. And you don't necessarily know those shifts unless you have on tracking it on an ongoing basis and having access to it instantly. It's going to continue to evolve. I think as the data becomes even better and really can reach its full potential in terms of how we're utilizing it, how we communicate with stakeholders, it's going to continue to be critical. Going back to goal setting, I remember the days where we just said, what do you feel like it should be? Like, what do you have in? Is it a percentage? Is it 3% on top of last year, or what is it? Well, let's hold off a minute. Like, there's only so much business. If you're next year or next 2 years, we're super busy. It's only so much business you can put into the next 24 months. So now you have to have more of a long-term strategy to how you continue to backfill out years, right? So it changed the entire conversation, and it's more granular as we got looking at, well, how busy are you every month? It comes down to what kind of business do you want every month? Like in Philadelphia, we ran 80% in 17, 18, 19, 80%. And I think 9 out of the 12 months a year, roughly, or right around there. It's tough to in Center City. So it's okay. I want another 200,000 group room nights. It's like, oh, where do you put them, right? And like having that conversation, we want it all in Q1. It's like it's not that much business in Q1 in the Northeast to find another 200,000. So let's have that conversation. Who do we go after? And also changing the incentive programs to obviously help with that, but also the goal setting being more of a partnership conversation. It's like, I'm okay with you booking. Actually, I'm okay with you booking less room nights if it falls in the time periods that we need it as a community. But then also within the community, the need periods are very different depending on where you're located. So it's a challenging conversation, but I think one that's going to continue to evolve and continue to grow. But that trust, in order to even begin that conversation, is critical.
Yeah, I can just echo a lot of that. So as a subject matter expert is what I would say you would be as a data person. Things like deployment, in Houston, we did a whole analysis behind booking patterns and groups and need dates and pace and information for the next, 10 years, actually. When I got there, and we changed 2 things. One, we needed more group weekend business. Houston is not known as a weekend destination. We were a corporate business travel destination for a long time. And so we redeployed a salesperson specifically targeted to weekend business and weekend bookings. And that was very successful for us. In the downtown market, we raised occupancy by like 10 points within a year of deploying that, because it's short term, it's quick, it's leisure, it's weekend, and you can impact a lot more than just your downtown market. We also looked at the numbers and saw what was booking. And one of the things that we were missing is a small shot of stacking things in the convention center where we had some space open, but we couldn't take a big convention anymore. And we had these holes. So we redeployed a sales manager to book what we call mini wides, which is anything in that 900 to 1400 peak hole that only needs about half of our convention center or 40% of the convention center. And you can put 2 of them together. And now you're into a major citywide, you're stacking 2 to make your compression that you need. And so she was tasked with specifically targeting those groups. And if they were really space intensive, then we would work with the hotels on, look, you could have for this size group, you can do half the space at the convention center. And then the 2 connecting hotels need to step up their plan, and they need to bump up their meeting space and use it for this convention. So you could do the smaller pharmaceuticals and then stack them on top of each other. So that was a lot of with the data that we were able to redeploy and change how our team sold things, which was helpful. And then in the market or with our customers, we also use the data to almost a little bit redeploy them, right? When there was questions of a group coming in, and like I said, it's a student group and they wanted, mid-March. Well, mid-March is one of the highest occupancy months in Houston. So then it was like, look, let me educate you on your demographics and your rates and what you've paid in the past. And you used to go to Philly in February. Well, Philly and Houston are very different in February. So for us, it's a prime date. For Philly, it might not be. So the rates that you've been paying in the past in Philly, you can get them in Houston. You just have to come in June. And let me prove it to you by showing you average rates in the market and average changes in rate through the months. Or airline travel, let's see this, how many direct flights you have coming in, and loading the sales team with data on just airline information and airline data. If they're competing against, when we compete against Dallas, well, we have this many flights from your destinations, and they have this many flights in your destination. So all of that data was good for our sales team, not to just redeploy them, but to help them in shifting the groups or booking the groups that we needed in the times that we needed. When I joined Houston first, we were doing about 18 citywides a year. This year, we will do 29 conventions post-pandemic. We did 28 in 2019. So with some of those strategies and shifting deployment and doing all those things, the other thing that we've done is when you look at future years, we're behind pace. It's a pandemic timeframe. We had a bit of a slowdown there for 2 years. but our pace is ahead over need dates. Our summer months already have bookings on the books. We have higher demand weekend groups already on the books where normally we wouldn't fill that further out. So the need times are filled in the future. So being behind pace doesn't make me as nervous, because even if we can't book something in those years, I know the hotels will book that short-term corporate that will help them fill over those prime dates. So that was a lot of what we did with the data at the beginning, is really like dwindle down what we needed to do to have a really successful team to book the times that we need and the dates that help the hotels and the surrounding areas outside the convention center.
Okay, and I mean, changing behavior is really the root of a lot of all of this. I mean, just understanding peak room night trends, like every data point you have, being able to have, again, the finger on the pulse to see as that happen and make changes, whether it's changing your sales team deployment or having a different conversation with your stakeholders. But I will say on a higher level as well, going back to some of the partnership and the stakeholder relationships on the convention center side. You know, we went through the process with Shimo on the event scoring platform. A lot of you probably know, right? Shimo's the consultant in that space, and immediately we're able to kind of have our sales team profile all of our convention customers based on ratings and based on agreed upon metrics with the headquarter hotels, the convention center, and the DMO. So everyone came together to say what's important in booking the San Diego Convention Center, and working on doing that with Hawaii as well. And that is really what then was the basis of building the analytics, right? To say, now that we've got agreement on what we think is best for the destination, and we are now rating all of our customers. Now it's all built out in terms of future time frame of when those actual meetings and those customers can come, when the date period, when the need periods are, when the holes are there in the center, and you start to play Tetris with, right, your meetings and your customers, but being able to see that as a sales leader. And then again, the DMO is leading that conversation with the headquarter hotels and the convention center, using that data as the basis that it's mutually agreed upon. So the behavior and how those conversations happen and the arguments around the value of a convention, whether it's their food and beverage spend, their regional impact, right? The peak room nights, everyone's coming at it from a different metric and perspective. Those metrics all have to come together, and then everyone has to agree that this is the best for the destination. And so that is now, headquarter hotels are now looking at those analytics, the convention center. And again, those conversations are now easy and immediate, and not everyone pulling a ton of reports, bringing their data to a table and kind of going, well, what are you seeing? It's all built centrally for that conversation to happen. So just that change in behavior in looking at it is has been really amazing in terms of also just, again, it elevates the DMO in terms of the level of respect and the knowledge base, because it's the DMO bringing that forward. So that's been impactful in that case, and another example of that.
Yeah, I mean, playing Tetris, we hate taking no for an answer. Our sales team hates taking no for an answer. So I mean, using that and having it so embedded in the process, you know, it's all about, right, overcoming those objections and understanding the business and being able to look and make decisions or make even adjustments to maybe some incentives and things like that to really push into things like need periods and make it all work together. And with that, I mean, that's just incredibly, you know, there's upward pushes on your conversion rates, and that's how everything starts to really fit together much stronger.
And then can I ask real quick on one more, just real quick, on the flip side, when you really start digging, and it's not to be picking or negative, but you want effective sales teams, right? I mean, I'm also just digging in and looking at, there are leads that go tentative and definite in the same day. You're right, you're starting to really understand sales behaviors. Do you have bad habits? Do you have a lot turning on the last day of the year to make their goal so that it's like tentative, definite? You know, you're able to see those things when you're digging into your data. And it's all, I think, to going back to all of this is deep and customized to your market, and knowing your market and your data set and your stakeholders. So
Mhm.
anyway, there's flips. Good and bad behavior change.
And helping them sell, right? I'm not a
Yes,
sales. I
right.
started as a salesperson
Right.
in hotels. I'm no
That's what
longer a
it's about.
salesperson. And so help giving them the tools to be able to sell it, to close it. You know, I'm up against Philly. Okay, but it's February and Philly's going to be, 10 below zero, right? and Houston's going to be 65 and sunny, so giving them those tools to say, this is how you sell it. It's not just about how much can you discount the convention center? Can you call the hotels and get their rates down? No. Let's understand the market and how you can sell it. And here's the tools to make your city shine with data and with the analytics to help them sell. It just makes them a stronger salesperson all around.
When we forget about the brand in that, we can't. You're selling the destination brand as a group sales team as well, right? So to your point, where's that brand in that destination sell and how is that receiving through? Excellent.
Yeah, and that's, pulling those points, that's one of the most important parts of the buy-in too, is from your actual staff,
Internal.
because you need the salespeople to really be working with you to get the data into the system and work everything and, the established, processes you're trying to get at. So, the data you're using to make the decisions is strong. But then once, but that was something, we battled with for a little while when we really started working and developing this. But, that's when we were able to start showing some of the benefits to the sales team. They became that much more willing to go the extra step, the extra mile to pull some of these together, because you can't you can't do it without great data, and you got to work with the team to make sure you have that. Did you have something?
No, I just want to remind everyone that Houston too did have a massive winter storm
Once.
in February.
Once in like 100 years.
That's funny.
That never happened.
Once. My occupancy went through the roof. Thank you for reminding me.
All during the times of the pandemic. It's great timing.
Yes.
Right. So how do you guys see, sales analytics evolving over the next handful of years as we look towards the future?
I think we're going to continue to get stronger. We're going to continue to get smarter, better, and how we're looking at the data, how we're strategizing, not just on the sales side, but for the entire market. I use this analogy a lot. You're essentially the revenue manager of the destination. You're the only one who really has a good view of everything that's happening in the market, both in the past and in the future, if you're having access to those data sources. We would often look at, and we do this with destinations today too, is working with them. We talked about around the block a little bit earlier, which is continue to be a big challenge in the group space, right? We were subscribing to a data source that gave us a look into the future, into booking patterns. And, we would have a huge spike in group business over certain dates, which was fully expected because we knew that the citywide was coming in. But we might also have a pretty big bump in transient bookings, right? So to have that conversation, being smarter about it, more proactive about it, having that conversation with a meeting planner, having that conversation with the sales team and your stakeholders and hotel partners, kind of being like, hey, how's your group pace over those days? How's your block picking up? Seen a lot of around the block activity happening over the same dates. Having those conversations, looking at the data in a more holistic view is just going to make us all better and the destination better. You're essentially going to move into yield management, right? You may be full, certain times of the year, but is it the right piece of business? Could you get more rates, higher rates with a different type of customer? And that could be on the group side, it could be on the leisure side, right? There are certain visitors that you have a higher yield from, a better yield from than others, who are staying longer, who's spending more when they're in market versus others. And how do we attract more of those running at the same occupancy, but a higher rate, which benefits the stakeholders, it benefits you. As many of you are still tied to hotel taxes for your budgets.
I agree with Eric. I think the analytics are just going to get stronger and better. No longer can you come in as just a revenue leader who knows Excel really well. You sometimes have to find a really good data scientist, and you learn and you evolve. And the more information that you can get out of the system, it just makes you a stronger leader. If you're yielding, like you said, you're yielding and you're revenue managing an entire market without having direct impact on the rate. You're having direct impact on the rates and the HOT and how you drive the HOT. And so I don't think analytics is going to go away. I think it's going to become more. I'll tell you, when I joined the DMO, it's been 5 years ago this week. And I went to DI that summer for the first time. I started in June and I went to DI in July, never having been in the DMO. And I put in a paper to talk about revenue management in the DMO world. And I thought, nobody's going to show up. And I had standing room only. It was a room like this, and there's people sitting everywhere. And I got emails and calls for months afterwards from DMOs asking me more questions. And what do you do? And how are you doing it? And what are you trying? Right. And the next year at DI, there was like 4 sessions like that. Because I think as we evolve, there's more and more understanding of the analytics and how it does affect the HOT. How does it affect the economic impact? How does it affect your tourism and the attractions? Understanding what convention now is even more important, because now you can track, conventioners through a market. And so that when this type of convention comes in, they hit up the zoo. This convention hits up Space Center, and so understanding that aspect too helps you with your other partners in the market, the restaurants and the attractions in the area. And so more and more you're able to work with like the cultural districts and the arts districts and the museums, and really building that travel and that group accessibility to their venues and to their things within the city. So I just think it's going to evolve, and we keep thinking of, if we have this information, can we tie it in with STAR? Can we tie it in with, Travel Click? Like, what can we do? How can we merge these two things? Wouldn't it be interesting to see that together? And I think more and more that's going to evolve.
Yeah. A lot of metrics, not even in the sales side, but across the the DMO, right? We've been talking a lot about quality over quantity, or, together with the quality of it, whether it's Barcelona principles on the PR side, marking the value of a customer on the group side the same way. I think the analytics are just creating a finer point and having the destinations really drill down to the value that they're delivering, or the DMO's delivering to the destination, and what that sales team is really there to do. We're there, I think, to do what our partners cannot, right, at a destination level. So really tying your analytics to that and having that value come through in the analytics. And it's things like, we haven't talked about like things like Cvent and where technology is going with that. Your sales team can't just be passing leads through. That's not, what value are they adding through that? When you start to look at the bulk of leads coming through technology platforms, right? What is your team doing to make sure that stays? Is that good business for your destination? Do you know what even happened to it? Is it just volume? So that quality and, really drilling into your destination, not just that's what the analytics are doing, really helping you to truly understand, again, your market, your customer, and being able to find it very quickly when you need to be effective, versus maybe just, we tend to, this is what's going on, this is what's going on in the region, kind of that broad stroke. This is giving you very targeted abilities to, again, drive value and do better for your destination. So it's really exciting.
For us.
Well,
Yeah.
No, just real quick too. We talked a lot about external partnerships and credibility and working with partners. Even internally, some great benefits, right? We talked a little bit on the sales side. It's often there's broader benefits as well in terms of marketing, for example, right? Looking at where we, often marketing teams don't necessarily have access to the sales data. And giving them access to certain things within the sales data could be very valuable. Like, why shouldn't you know in a very efficient way where the meeting planners are located in terms of when you're doing some of your marketing? Why shouldn't you know what third-party partners are yielding the best business in terms of conversion rates? You might get 1,000 leads from a Cvent, but if you're converting 2% of it, you might be better off spending money in other kind of third-party partners. So having those conversations, breaking down silos within an organization as well could be, another added benefit and extremely helpful in helping moving the destination forward.
And so we're running out of time. So we just like to, if there's 1 or 2 questions we can take, and then we can move forward. I know I'm getting evil eyes for asking that. So 2 questions. And when you go.
Yeah, following up on this conversation of marketing and sales, is that we're finding, certainly when I was at LA Tourism, I did marketing analytics, and Bruce McGregor was down in Nashville, did sales analytics. And we really didn't talk to each other a whole lot. There was not a lot of crossover at all. So I'm wondering what advice you, and we know there should be crossover, and there should be, they all should be looking at all the data. And even with something like Symphony trying to break down the stats, I still kind of see on the calls, suddenly we talk about marketing and the salespeople drop off, or whatever. So from a researcher's perspective, understanding how those, particularly if you've been on the sales side, and now you find your destination, you're doing a lot of marketing because it's all about the discretionary traveler. What advice do you give to the researcher of now, how do you bridge this together and communicate more effectively in the organization and break down those silos? Because they're still there. Even if you have something like Symphony, they're still there.
One of the things I would say is educate. I educated our executive committee and did, just a session on how to read a star report and what I was looking at and how you were looking at it in the market, understanding how the Google analytics, peak when the marketing went out, how did that match up with later the market and how it recovered and how it, what it did and the spikes on the weekends or whatever it was. And so I had to educate our executive team first, and had meetings with our CFO and our CEO and our CMO and really taught them, like, this is what I'm looking at and this is why, and this is how it benefits you. And now I do a weekly recap of the STAR report with bullets specific to marketing, to sales, to our CEO and our CFO. And here's how the tax is going to be affected this week based on the forecast that we did for the week. And very detailed bullet pointed message that I send every Friday. And that's kind of how I've blended the two. I do the analytics for both because we just didn't have anybody. And so I would just say educate. That would be like key. Educate everybody within the organization. Don't assume that they know it. If you think it's basic, STAR Information 101. STAR Information 101 is what people maybe don't know. So one of the ladies in tourism who left, she went to Franklin as CEO, she always said to me, she's like, Cindy, sometimes you got to dumb it down. And I'm like, I am dumbing it down. This is as simple as it gets. She's like, no, dumb it down,
New ways.
so you like bring it down. And so just educate and make it, if you think it's basic, they may not know it. So that would be the only advice I could give.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
All right, one last question.
Can I add one more thing to that? I'm sorry.
All right, well, then maybe we
Just
won't do
real-
one last
no,
question.
can I- 'cause
We'll
there's
do one
been
more
a-
ad instead. There we go.
Soapbox for me for the last 20 years at TTRA. I mean, the role of the research group, right, and the analysts within a DMO should really be holistic, right? You should be serving everything from your monthly performance measures, sales and marketing to your strat plan, and being part of the strategic plan. Hopefully the role of the research group is holistic in viewing the entire market and the data set. Like that's where I think, anyway, hopefully we go.
Without a doubt. All
Hopefully.
right. Thank you,
Sorry, go
everyone.
ahead.
Thank you.